Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Full and Thriving. If you are new here, I want to say welcome to the show and to the Full and Thriving family. I am so grateful for every single new listener who has decided to check out Full and Thriving to improve their health and well-being and live a full and thriving life. I am so grateful to have you all here. For the returning listeners, I am also so glad that you are back, and thank you for joining me, especially as the new year begins. This is awesome. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Meg McCabe, and I am your host. This episode is really special for me because this is the first episode I'm recording in 2025, and it is the official end of my maternity leave because I have been on maternity leave since Jack was born on October 1st. And it was such a beautiful 3 months. And of course, like most moms, I have a lot of mixed feelings going back to work. I could stay in this newborn love bubble with Jack and Dan for a year. I really could. I love it. However, I also love serving my community. I love working with my one-on-one clients. I love the podcast and the Recovery Collective. So if you are listening to this, I do want to remind all of you that my one-on-one coaching practice is getting back into the swing of things, and we are currently filling my schedule. So if you want to work with me as your one-on-one coach, please sign up using the consultation link in the show notes. I always like to talk to people one-on-one before they sign up to officially work with me. So if you want to work with me, or if you're curious about it, grab yourself a 20-minute session with me completely free, and we can talk about what it's like to work with me one-on-one. I love it when I finally connect with people from the Full and Thriving community who have listened to the show. And I want to say, if this podcast has helped your eating disorder recovery journey in any way, I promise the one-on-one experience is even better. So that's your sign to just click on that link in the show notes and sign up for a consultation, because I would love to work with the Full and Thriving listeners. Okay, so like I said, I have mixed feelings. I'm feeling a little bit somber, going back, not being able to see Jack 24/7 like I have been, but I'm also so ready and excited to bring a new energy to the show and to my practice. So with that, let's dig into this episode. I gotta tell you, this episode is going to share a little bit about my birth story and also some things I've observed about myself and learned about myself through the delivery process and becoming a new mom. So this is a personal episode. I'm kind of documenting what I went through over the past 3 months to keep all of you in the loop. And I gotta tell you, I had this vision of what maternity leave was going to look like. First of all, a lot of what I envisioned was true. Like I mentioned, that love bubble, I imagined it being that way. It was that plus more. I got to snuggle with my healthy baby. I have a wonderful husband who's supportive and loving, and I'm breastfeeding, so I got to connect with him in that way. There's just so much beauty in what I experienced. I would literally, with all the hormonal changes going on, I would listen to different songs like Disney music and just cry happy tears that he finally made it, and he's here and he's healthy and he's with me. And every day I am struck with awe and amazement that he is my son and that he is who he is. He's already got his own little personality developing. He loves to talk. He always goes, who, and like, it's almost like he knows how to use his words and not cry as much. Like, that's how good of a baby he is. He doesn't really cry that much. If he needs my attention, he'll go, "Who, who?" It's like amazing. He's such a great baby. Dan and I are very blessed. So much of maternity leave has been amazing, and I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. However, it's also been really hard. There have been so many things I did not anticipate happening that added to my emotional experience. So, first of all, one of my dearest, closest friends and my business partner announced and shared with me personally that she has cancer, which is scary and really, really hard. So I was coping emotionally with that devastating news. I haven't had someone close to me with cancer in a very long time. So that was terrifying news to get during my maternity leave. And I also had a very close family member have to go to this psychiatric unit because they had a mental health crisis. So I was involved with that. And then also my husband's mother passed away, and her funeral was just a week before I gave birth. So there's like this emotional roller coaster that I've been experiencing of just highs and lows, ups and downs, waiting for news from my friend or family members, trying to focus on the good, but trying to be present, and then having your mind focused on so many other things. It's just been a really rough emotional time. So I think what I'm saying here is I definitely have so many blessings in my life. It's been a glossy 2024, like marriage, healthy baby, healthy pregnancy, and then just, there's always other stuff going on. And I really learned that during this maternity leave process. That being said, my birth story is also a really hard one. It was not what I imagined. And before I move forward with this episode, I do want to put a little trigger warning in place because I will be talking about my birth story, which could be triggering to some people, not in a ton of detail, but I will be sharing some. And then also, I will be talking about some intrusive thoughts that I had postpartum. So if that is triggering to you, I just ask you to take care of yourself and skip those parts, or just skip the rest of this episode in general. So I will see you in whatever episode you choose to listen to instead. I've actually witnessed a birth before through the birth of my niece, Nora, and my identical twin. I was in the room when she gave birth, and her birth was very smooth and easy, relatively, obviously. Enjoyable is a word she's used to describe it. Mine was just this, I would say, train wreck in so many ways. Of course, though, Jack was healthy and stable and great during the birth. So again, it could have been a lot worse, but my birth was rough. I'm going to spare you the details. Let's just say the epidural, which is the pain medicine that I was planning to use, showed up 90 minutes after we had called it. So it had very much shown up very late. And when they administered the epidural, it did not work. So I essentially did not have the appropriate anticipated medication, among so many other things, that some disrespectful doctors and you name it. It was a tough experience. But I will say, after all of the pain that I went through, and I was 10 centimeters dilated, the doctor had me sit up to let Jack kind of like have his head move lower into the birth canal before I had to begin pushing. So I had an hour where I was just 10 centimeters and not pushing. And I started to kind of freak out because my sister was pissed off about the anesthesiologist being a jerk. My mom was scared, and I was processing all the pain I had gone through and recognizing that it wasn't even over. I hadn't even started pushing yet. Oh God, it was rough. So I had this hour where I just got in my head. I was so terrified to push, and I felt flattened. I felt the lowest level of morale I've ever felt in my life. Like I tell you, even when I had my eating disorder, I always had a fight in me. I always had some sort of like vigor to keep going. And I talk to clients all the time who have no more fight left in them, who are not sure if they're going to make it, who are not sure if they even want to continue. And I never have had a moment really where I fully relate to that because my eating disorder was not the same. And in that moment, when I was sitting there not pushing, but knowing that it was coming and my morale was so low and I just wanted to not do it. I wanted to quit. I wanted to call it all off. I've never in my life experienced feeling so low like that. Even on the precipice of one of the most beautiful moments of my life, giving birth to my son who I had carried for 9 months, I still felt zero morale. It was such a strange experience. And I thought of the clients I have who show up in their sessions not sure if they can keep going. So I felt like I have another level of understanding, even though it's a totally different experience. I feel like I have a new level of understanding of someone who comes to me and they just have no more hope. It kind of reminded me of when I have clients who have relapsed and they've lost a lot of the measurable progress they've once had, and they feel like they cannot have the energy, or they do not have the energy to move forward and do all of that again. Like they see this mountain that's impossible to climb in front of them. That was what I felt like when I knew I had several hours of pushing ahead of me, but zero fight left. It was a very interesting place to exist. And of course, there's no getting out of giving birth. So I did not have a choice. I eventually had to push, but wow, I was terrified. I asked the lady for anxiety medicine because I literally felt anxious. They did not give me any. Dan asked me what I needed in that moment, and the only thing I could say was a hug. It was so hard. But anyway, once pushing started, it got a lot better and I felt more hope. However, pushing, once I got the hang of it, it worked. And Jack arrived, but it was not this cheery, joyful arrival that I had anticipated because of everything that happened before. When Jack came out, we had a beautiful hour or maybe hour and a half of skin to skin, and I fed him for the first time, and that just felt so wonderful and so amazing. And once I handed him to Dan and I was eating food, that flattened, awful, like train wrecky feeling came crashing back. Like it just felt like this whoosh of, I am sure the hormones were whirling around, but I just could not believe I had just gone through all of that. And so I was balancing kind of this traumatic experience with this beautiful moment of having a son. Thankfully, working in mental health, I was very aware of all of the emotions I was balancing at the same time. And I was able to mindfully observe what I was feeling. And although it was very tempting for me to should myself and say I shouldn't be feeling these negative emotions right now during such a positive life event. I did not let myself go there. I just honored the fact that, yes, the birth process was not what I had expected, and it was hard. And I also had this amazing, healthy son and the most supportive husband in the world who did the best job in the delivery room and really showed up for me and Jack. So again, life is always about balancing and not judging yourself for what comes up. And I'm really proud of myself because I was able to get to that place and be there when Jack was born. I slowly was able to cope with all of the emotions I had from that experience, and the postpartum experience was so much better. Once I was able to kind of have some time and space from the delivery itself, I really embraced motherhood and Jack and the exciting new little boy I had in front of me. Wanted to share that because it was very special, and I thought of my people in that moment. I thought of all of you who are struggling or who've ever been there. It was like, oh, wow, I'm here now and I get it a little bit more. Okay, but besides that, and that was really heavy, I do want to share some of my positives from the birth experience and from postpartum. First of all, I realized that I am boss at setting boundaries. Throughout this process, I have learned it. I'm finally good at it. I know when a boundary needs to be set and I can set one. For instance, during the delivery, when things got really intense, as much as I love my mom and my sister, I actually asked them to leave the room just because I needed only doctors in there and Dan. And they were both very emotional because it was such a hard process, and their emotions were making me feel really emotional. So I had to kindly ask them to leave, and that was really hard, but they took it with stride and returned once Jack was born. I've also had to set a lot of boundaries because Jack's a little baby during flu season. So I've had to have some awkward conversations, at least for me, where I have to stick up for Jack and ask people to wash their hands, or just straight up tell them no, they can't hold him, or no, we're not bringing him to this holiday event. Like, we decided not to bring him to Thanksgiving, and that was really hard. And for me, I feel like a little bad for other people that they're missing out on getting to see Jack because they're all excited, or maybe they were expecting it. But I had to set that boundary and do the right thing for me and for my son first and foremost. So the boundary setting for me is spot on. I also will say asking for my needs is spot on. During the delivery, I always knew what I needed. I had no problem asking for what I needed. However, I did feel a lot of people pleasing come up when I was at the hospital. When you're giving birth, you don't have to be the nicest person in the room. You don't have to be a sweetheart. You are in severe pain, and these doctors have literally seen it all. These nurses have seen it all. My people pleasing came out to the highest level that I've seen in a very long time. I was almost overly polite to everyone, super kind. I wanted to make everyone else feel comfortable. So I heard myself apologizing a lot. I was also criticizing myself openly a lot. So it's interesting when you give birth, how your areas that need to be healed and also your strengths really show up. So it was interesting because the people pleasing has been something I've come across this year as one of the roots of my eating disorder. And it was definitely so present in the delivery room. It's frustrating how worried I was about everyone else's emotions, like all the nurses, all the doctors, making sure I don't make them feel uncomfortable. when in reality, if anyone has a right to be a little rude or even assertive or just, I don't know, pissy, it's when you're giving birth, right? So anyway, that definitely came up. And another thing I noticed being a new mom, which was interesting, was I did have some anxiety and intrusive thoughts, not about self-harm, but like things happening to Jack. So I had these anxious thoughts, like I constantly would think about dropping him or somebody tripping down the stairs while holding him, or basically anything related to him getting physically injured in some sort of like accident or someone like tripping with him. I had those thoughts. So it was very interesting because when we had, for instance, grandparents visit, I let the grandparents hold my baby. However, the whole visit, I would be thinking, oh my God, his head isn't being held properly. This position's uncomfortable. Or, oh my gosh, they're going to drop him. Like, what if they drop him? And I really had to identify and label my anxious thoughts and cope with my uncomfortable emotions during those initial meetings with, you know, friends and family who met Jack for the first time. I had to like reality check myself and remind myself, you know what? This individual has held many babies in their life. They've raised many children themselves. Why would I think that they could not hold my baby or that they were going to drop my baby, right? So I noticed a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxious thoughts come up where I had to reality check myself and cope. Like I had to breathe through all of those sort of panicked emotions that would come up because I was afraid of these kind of unrealistic things happening. Like, for instance, if Dan picked him up, I would imagine like, oh, Dan tripping over something on the ground and falling. And I was like, how many times has that ever happened, actually? Or if I'm holding Jack and Dan hands me like a cup of tea that's really hot, I imagined it spilling on Jack. And of course, this is all like these are intrusive thoughts that I just had to like label and move on from. It was really hard. And I know many moms experience some level of anxiety as well. Some moms experience postpartum depression. I'm thankful I didn't experience that, but I definitely had so many like different things come up when you're in this hormonal state. One thing I'm trying to mix in the learning opportunities and the growth areas with the positives that I also learned was that I am a boss at being present with my kid. I put my phone away. I can snuggle him. I can talk to him. And I will sing to him. I didn't realize how much I love singing and how important singing is, and music. I've always known music is important, but I will sing to him and turn on music and try to get him to smile. And I just forget that my phone exists. And I feel like that was one of my worries as a new mom, like making sure I can be fully present with him. And like I said, there was so much going on during this time of my life that for all of that happening as well, I feel like I have not missed a second of being with my son and being present with him to the best of my ability. Like, I'm really proud of that. And then one interesting story I wanted to share with all of you was that I had a moment where I got a little obsessive about weighing him. And I had a feeling this could happen because of my predisposition to having an eating disorder, but I did not anticipate it fully, like because of the circumstances. So what exactly happened was Dan's sister gifted us this really nice, like scale that we can hook up to an app, and we just put him on it, and we would put him on it maybe before we bathed him like once a week. He was always gaining a healthy amount of weight, so it wasn't causing any stress. It was just this exciting little piece of information that we had to see, like, oh, look at his trajectory. It's so exciting. However, 1 week, he did not gain the weight he was supposed to gain. He actually lost like an ounce, which is not much, but that triggered a little bit within me to start over focusing on the number. It's so funny. I can do this for myself, but for him, I was a little bit scared that he maybe was getting sick or maybe I wasn't feeding him enough. And so I started like beating myself up and feeling as if I had done something wrong and over worrying. And I reached out to the doctor. And of course, the doctor was like, it's fine. It's normal for babies to have like fluctuations with their weight. But when that happens, it's suggested that you kind of weigh your baby before and after feedings. So I literally did 2 days of that. And I just felt that stress of the scale in a whole different way that I haven't experienced before. So I've reached out to a group of my mom friends and explained to them what was happening. And one of my best friends was like, you know what? Maybe just don't use the scale unless the doctor tells you it's necessary, because Jack's been gaining fine, for the first several months. So how about you just don't use the scale unless the doctor asks you to? And I had to check myself and I was like, you know what? That is what I am moving forward with. So we have not weighed him since that moment. Just through photos alone, I can see that he is gaining healthy. He's also eating well still, and he is not sick. And so I've had to let that scale kind of like collect dust, if you will, because nobody needs even any sort of pressure with the scale. And it's funny because when I was gifted that scale, I thought to myself, oh no, I could see moms getting like really anxious around this. I probably won't be an anxious mom. I'll be a chill mom. That's what I said to myself. And here we are. So again, all of these are just honest observations of what I experienced throughout this new mom period. I've actually shared so much with you already in this short amount of time, but I do want to leave it with all of you and just say that Jack is here because I recovered from my eating disorder several years ago. And he is a product of working hard and trying to get my period back and nourishing my body. And I want this story that I've shared with you to just, first of all, show you if you want to have a child one day, your recovery is necessary, because we all know the period can disappear or your reproductive health can kind of shut down. So please use this as an example of a child in the world who is alive because their mom chose to recover from an eating disorder. I also want to share this with you because as someone who is an eating disorder recovery coach, I work so hard to be on top of my own mental game and my mental and emotional healing. And so I'm really proud of how I was able to experience maternity leave, the highs and lows that came with it, and honestly share with you the things that I felt I've done really well as a mom and the things that came up for me during this life-changing experience. So with that, I just want to say thank you for listening. This was very personal. This was an unscripted episode. I'm going to be doing more of these because I got to work smarter, not harder as a mom. And that is a goal for me going into 2025. I want to be present with my son, and I want to continue serving my community the best way possible. So writing these really fancy solo show scripts, probably won't happen as often, but you're going to get the real, raw, honest version of me. And this is how honest I am as a coach. So if you're looking for a coach who can push you and who can be direct and be honest about your situation, again, I am here to help. And if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, check out the link in the show notes, sign up for a free consultation, and I will see you next time at the Full and Thriving podcast. I am so grateful to have all of you here, and talk to you soon. So there you have it, another episode of Full and Thriving in the books. I want to personally thank you for joining me in listening to today's show. And if you found value in this conversation, I would be so grateful if you could please take a moment to subscribe to the show and leave a review. Your support not only helps us reach more people who are striving to live their most full and thriving life, but it also allows us to bring on even more incredible guests with valuable insights that can change your life. Every follow, every review makes a huge difference, and together we can continue to grow this beautiful community. Thanks again for being a part of the journey, and we'll see you next time on Full and Thriving.